You're watching Every Day's a Saturday, USCC veteran. Let's go, baby. And here's your host, Bryan. Gosh, I keep forgetting to do that lately. What's going on, friends and family? We are back on another day with Coffee Talk with Bryan and my special guest, as usual. That is with Marie Slider Henriksen. And of course, we are going down our life and, basically from when we began to all the way to present. So we are now hitting that point where we're going to talk about our military life and our experiences while we were in the military. And, I think I can't really talk for her, but I think for myself, that's when I think my life really started to form and I started having more stability and things like that. So it's going to be exciting to have that conversation, but let's go ahead and bring Marie on. What's going on?
Hey, how's it going?
Another fun day.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, we it's a time where we're gonna brew up some coffee and got some good old Don Francisco in here. Love me some Don Francisco coffee. Got some great flavor. But all right, let's go ahead and brew up some coffee real quick. And guys, let's not forget about Cash Coffee. I am a proud affiliate of Cash Coffee. I love what they stand for as a company, and I love what they do for their first responders, their veterans, and their community as well. Go check out some Cash Coffee. I'll be sure to put the link in the description, and you'll help me out a little as well if you hit that link. But all right, let's go ahead and get ready for this next exciting point. We kind of got through the rough part, right? Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that's the end of the rough part, but I would say that we probably got through a lot of more of that childhood trauma. Now we're going into adulthood, and I don't know for you, but I know that the military was a major turn for me, in the right direction, we'll say.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I had some equally, good parts and equally rough parts, but it most definitely helped me to learn and grow and build and learn how to be an adult,
Right. Yeah.
And it like I said, equally good and bad. There are some rough parts, but overall I enjoyed my time and I'm so grateful for it.
Same. Yep. And so let's go ahead and get it right into it. Marie, you can go ahead and start off with, basically, what happened from the time you graduated high school and what path you kind of took from that point.
Okay. Well, first off, hi, everybody. It's good to see you. And it's kind of a very bittersweet day because we're recording this the day after Memorial Day. And yeah, in years past, Memorial Day has been really rough for me. I used it for a long time as an excuse to drink, to go party, just to ignore everything. And when I got sober and started to really understand what Memorial Day meant, it was rough for me for a long time. I was just full of a lot of pain, a lot of frustration, a lot of survivor's guilt for being the one that made it home from Iraq. There was also a lot of bitterness towards all of my battle buddies that chose to end it since we've been back. There was even jealousy for that. Like, why did they get to give up and not me? Like, there was a lot of mixed emotions that I had with that stuff. There was a lot of just pity, self-pity that I was living in, and anger and frustration. And yesterday I woke up for the first time in many years on Memorial Day and just felt peace. I felt peace and I felt love from the other side, and I felt compassion for my other battle buddies still here, but the biggest point is feeling that just love from the other side, from our guys over there, and I have a poem that I wrote, a while ago with some of my family members and also a lot of my battle buddies, in my mind. And it's called My Squad of Angels. And, it's
Perfect.
it's the idea that, I believe, that all of our angels are on the other side. They're watching over us and they're waiting for us. And especially after the resurrection, they'll be there with us, and we'll be able to live again, And so I just wanted to read this poem with you. It's called My Squad of Angels. And I wrote it at almost a year sober, you know. So they're not that far away, all those who passed before. They're waiting for my arrival just behind this mortal door. They're watching and guiding prayerfully in the space that's just beyond. They're in the creases of my heart, a place they're very fond. They're floating through my memories to help sort out my past. They want me to find happiness, but their flag is at half mast. They do this to help me bear the weight of struggles along the way. They want to give their strength to me during every painful day. They wait beyond my consciousness, their warmth they want to share. Sometimes I feel it blowing in the wind that moves my hair. I see them in a stranger's face as a flicker or a feeling. Sometimes the similarities scare me through the ceiling. I wonder if that person may be sent from one who passed, or if a chance connection is a hook my loved ones cast. They're always looking out for dangers along my way, because a path of positivity may be just a choice away. They speak to me with whispers, heard with my heart, not ears. When I think of them with love, my grief slowly disappears. When I start to change my thoughts from missing them with sorrow into a beautiful memory, I get strength until tomorrow. Then I start to feel them stronger in the shadows that are cast. And I know that our connection is not only in the past. To me, these thoughts do comfort and fill my heart with song, for through my earthly journey, they will travel right along.
That's a great one. Per the use, you always you nail them. And I saw you're a rapper too now. No.
Yeah, yeah, that was it. That was kind of silly yesterday. Yeah,
No, yeah, you know what? Love it. You're having fun with it. So
yeah.
that's perfect.
Yeah, in
Great.
case you guys haven't seen it, I did a little rap based on part of a poem that I read to you guys last week about unmet expectations. So feel free to take a look at it. I won't do it here.
And we need a rendition of that. What rendition? What do they call it? Can't speak.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
Before you get on with yours, I guess since you touched on Memorial Day. Um, you know, for me, Memorial Day's had a like you. I can't. I think it's. I've gone through a lot of different emotions throughout the years about Memorial Day. When I first got out, I think I was just very numb to it all, right? But I think for veterans alone, Memorial Day is a different kind of day. It went from when you were a kid to the 3 day weekend where it's barbecues, you're out by the lake, people are drinking and all that stuff. And when I ended up joining the military, you didn't really think much of it still, until you start learning more about the ones that came before you, and then you started thinking, oh my gosh, this this meaning means something completely different now to me than a party day or something like that, right? And then I got to the level of like, why are people saying Happy Memorial Day? And then, I've kind of went through certain emotions of what I thought about Memorial Day. And I think either, this year or the year before is where I think it's kind of changed a little bit for me, where I started thinking, because, after you hear a couple messages from other fellow veterans and stuff as well, and it kind of, they put things a little bit more into perspective for you. Right. And bless you. And, woo, there it is.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, man, it's all good. My wife does like 100 at a time. So, but this past year, I feel like for me, in the year before, it's a time for us to keep the memory of the ones that passed alive all the time. It shouldn't be one day to do this, but it is a time to remember again that those people came here and they gave it all, and they are not here to celebrate. But do you think at the end of the day that they fought for us to be somber and not enjoy that day? Right. So I think that Memorial Day should be a day where veterans are out there really celebrating for the brothers and sisters that weren't here, right? And living a life that they didn't get to live, but they wish they could have, right? And then, so for me, I've taken it to a different level, and for people out there, I think they just want to gravitate and say thank you for your service to veterans and things like that. And a lot of us are like, hey, it's not about us anymore, right? To this day is more about the ones that gave it all and sacrificed it all. And like, let's say their names. Let's not forget who they are. And let's not forget the ultimate sacrifice that they have, and that there's still families here today, right? The Gold Star families, the ones that still have to live on life. And so this Memorial Day means a lot more to a Gold Star family, I assure you, where it really hits them hard, right? Because all they see is videos and things of fallen soldiers and things of that nature. So it's going to be heavy in their hearts for a lifetime, right? And for the brothers and sisters who also deal with grief and feeling of survivor's guilt and all those things, it comes really heavy on Memorial Day. But for my brothers and sisters out there, guys, we have to live on. We have to fight on for our brothers and sisters, and we can't give in to the numbers anymore and keep giving in to the enemy, because every time one of us decides to take our own life, and we were a part of the war on terror, now we're going to give them that number at the end of the day. And I don't like that part either. So everybody out there, just remember, when you're out there and you're cracking a cold one, you're enjoying your barbecue, enjoy it, but also don't forget why you get to enjoy it. Don't take that part for granted, because I think a lot of people do. They just look at it as another day off and another day to get to drink and another day to party, right? It's okay. And you're right, it is. But carve out a moment, man. Even if you just pour out one for someone, or just, hey, guys, hey, just real quick, I just want to say, hey, rest in peace to all those that gave their life, or something. Just real quick, man. That's all. It just takes a quick little thing just to give them a shout out, And anyways, we'll go ahead and press on. But anybody out there, happy Memorial Day. Hope you enjoyed your 3-day weekend. And once again, don't forget about our brothers and sisters who gave it all. And for the families, the daughters, the sons, the dads, the moms, the uncles, the aunts, all the family members that are still living on as they lost someone. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, I have graduated over the years, like Happy Memorial Day. That wording, I didn't really like it, and I couldn't figure it out. And so what I've graduated into for me is I wish people a peaceful Memorial Day. hey, I hope you find joy today. I hope you find peace today. You
Right.
know, I hope today can be a positive for you. And so what I've done, I don't usually have the energy to be around so many people. So I don't go to like the
Right.
parades or the celebrations. I also don't do like, big barbecues or anything like that. I don't drink, and a lot of that stuff usually tends to be around drinking. And so I kind of like stay back from it. So what I do for myself is I take the time to call some of my battle buddies that day, and just check in on them. Hey, I hope you're having a peaceful day. Hey, do you need a talk? Hey, here's how I'm feeling with this. And then I went to a recovery meeting last night just in case there was anybody that needed to talk and stuff like that. And so that's kind of how I've chosen to do it. So it's not about being somber. It's just about being there for the next person who needs to talk. And so that's kind of how I've graduated into it
That's
for
awesome.
myself. And then I don't know if you know Tom McDonald. Like he's
Yeah, I know Tom.
Tom
Yeah.
McDonald. He just came out with a new song that touches on that. It's not Happy Memorial Day. It's I can't remember how he worded it, but it was a pretty good
Dude
song.
has some amazing lyrics, and he
Yes.
really hits on some great things for our country. So
Yeah. And then I also, if this is okay, I wanted to do a shout out for if you guys have never heard of the Till Valhalla Project. Okay. These guys are amazing. And the Till Valhalla Project, that the idea is it's a nonprofit. Well, I don't know if it's fully nonprofit. I'm not sure how it all works. But their whole idea is when we come back from deployments, we never really stop fighting the battle. And so for those of us who take our lives, we're still going to Valhalla because we're still fighting the
mhm.
fight. And so they offer plaques to family members of people who have died overseas, but also for those who have taken their lives since. And so their clothing line goes towards those plaques for the family members, and they are just an amazing program. You can go on their website and it tells their story. I'm not getting anything for promoting them. I just love their stuff. I wear it all the time. You know, this one, standing on the shoulders of our nation's heroes, built on the shoulders of our nation's heroes. Like I love their stuff, and I just like what they're doing. So
No, absolutely. No, that's what we got to do. Shoot, give a shout out to the ones out there that are making a difference and things like that. And it's funny that you touched on that because real quickly, let's give a huge shout out to all the nonprofit and organizations out there who are doing things selflessly. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into being a nonprofit, and as you know, a nonprofit, most of the people are not usually making any kind of income from it. It is
mhm.
literally doing it from the kindness of their heart, and their how they get their monies by donations, sponsorships. They got to do raffles. I mean, there's a lot of things that goes into doing a nonprofit. So everybody out there who's out there just putting your work and putting your heart into your nonprofits, keep going. Our brothers and sisters need you guys because you guys are out there making a difference. The VA is bombarded, so we do need a lot of these nonprofits out there that kind of take anybody that's maybe having an issue moving forward with getting their help. But it's always nice to have these nonprofits to fall back on to get your head right, get around like-minded people, things of that nature. So, and if there's not a nonprofit out there that you want, make
Then
one.
create.
You know what I mean? Go create it. And that's the beautiful part about it. And there's a lot of programs out there, being a veteran, that will help you along the way to get your nonprofit going. So don't be afraid. And maybe you needed that message today to get out there and get going. So hey, we're
Yeah.
telling you, go do it. All
Yeah,
right.
there's so many out there, and like
Yes.
especially all those retreats, that are saving people's lives. Like,
Yep.
yeah,
They do
yeah.
hunting, fishing, like you said, the retreats, jumping out of planes, um,
There's the
quest,
Wounded Warrior Project is amazing. You've got
yeah,
Team Red, White, and Blue, which is amazing. Here in Utah, there's Continue Mission. There's so many different ones that are just
equine
willing to do
therapy.
so
If
many
you guys
activities.
like to ride
Yes.
horses or just want to be around cattle and stuff like that, there's plenty of ranches that are open to veterans and sometimes their families as well. So don't be afraid, guys, to go out there and look. And one of the big things that I try to do with Every Day's a Saturday is really push them out and keep everybody knowing, hey, there's these nonprofits out there for you. Because I'm always shocked to learn, like, wow, I didn't know we had that. So yeah. All right, we'll go ahead and get on. We've been going for about 20 minutes before we even get into the actual show. But we'll go ahead and let you take over now and take us right back down that path of what made you decide to join and all that good stuff.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, kind of touching base on, before, like in high school, I was not doing really good. I had, dealt with some childhood stuff. I dealt with rape. I dealt with, just a lot of emotional stuff. And I wasn't doing well in school. And I knew that I needed to do something with my life, but I didn't know what it was. It started as an argument with my parents, and all of a sudden, I joined. I signed. I did my first swearing. They had me.
A little bit of a rebel. It sounded like you rebelled up right there.
Yes, but I rebelled up in a good way.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, this time was a good rebel.
Yeah. So I did 2 different swear-ins. I did one swear-in the day after I graduated, and then I was in the delayed entry program where they kind of taught me how to shoot. They taught me how to do push-ups and stuff. And so then I actually joined in, I think it was July of 2006. And they sent me out to South Carolina, where I did my basic training out there. And it was tough for me. I was not used to that kind of environment, and I got in trouble a lot because I am a smiler. I'm a laugher. I got in trouble so much. Like,
that's funny you say that because same.
Yeah, but like I had a friend with me, and we were called Goof Troop. Because like my drill sergeants, anyways, they were just funny. And I remember at one time, this is just a random funny story. I remember one time I was standing in line and my last name was Slider. And I forgot to put my Henriksen
your married name now.
There. Oh my gosh. Dang. Yeah. Let's see. I totally forgot.
I at least threw it out there, in the introduction. So because I didn't see it, but I still threw it out there.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry about that. But anyways,
yeah, Mr. Henriksen, I made sure you were covered, brother.
Yeah. If you guys don't know, I recently got married a year ago, so I'm
to a Marine.
Still getting used to it. Yes, to a Marine.
Badass, So
yeah. But my last name was Slider, and if you guys have ever heard of Top Gun, there's a Slider. Anyways, there was a time that I was standing in line for chow, and a drill sergeant comes up to me and sniffs me, and he's like, "Slider, you stink." And I was like, "I'm so sorry, drill sergeant. I took a shower today." And everyone just busts out laughing because that's a line in the movie, and it was just too funny. But basic training, I learned how to be a soldier. I learned. I grew up really, really quick, and I learned some amazing tools. I had some really great drill sergeants. They were funny as heck. They picked on me all the time, but it was so funny because our last day of basic training, they called me off of the barracks and out of the barracks duty because everyone was cleaning all their gear. And even though I had been traumatized, I was pretty vocal, even though I wasn't as active in my church, I still had a lot of faith in my church from these different experiences that I had. And so like I would talk to different people about my church or just trying to find positives and stuff like that. And it was funny because the last day that I was there, everyone was cleaning their gear and I got called into the drill sergeant's office. And they had me in there and they're like, relax, sit down. And I was like, what is going on? Like, they have been so tough this entire time. And one guy's like, yo, my wife is Mormon too. And can you tell me about this anyways, it was like the funniest thing. And I just sat there in there for hours just bullshitting with these guys that had been intimidating and scaring the crap out of me this entire, 2 months or however long basic training was. And they were just like real cool, and we talked, and I was like, oh, like these guys are human too. And I was able to see like a different side of things. And anyways, it was just it was a really good introduction for me into the military. It's like, hey, when we're doing our job, we do our job, and you get stuff done. You push aside the emotions, you get stuff done, you do what you got to do, and then hey, let's bullshit and have fun. And so I thought
Where
that
was
was
your
my
boot camp at?
experience.
Where
It
did
was
you
at
go?
Fort Jackson, South
Fort Jackson,
Carolina.
South Carolina. Yep.
Yeah. So it was just so cool. I'm learning how to kill, I'm learning how to fight, I'm learning how to do all of this stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, what's up? Come talk to us. So it was quite fun. And then I ended up in AIT, which is the job training. I was a medic. And so I ended up in Texas, Fort Sam Houston, Texas, as a medic. And I had a lot of fun there, but that's kind of when I started, getting myself into trouble a little bit, because in AIT you get your weekends, and so I, was about the partying on the weekends, even though I was underage, but it's all good, but the medical training was great, fantastic. I really enjoyed learning how to be a medic. I at one point failed one of the tests. They call it a double tap. And so then they held me back to be in another class to finish it up. But it's okay. I really did enjoy. I loved learning how to be a medic. And like the first couple months is learning the civilian NREMT basic, right? It's the National Emergency Medical Technician. Um, Sorry, I got something in my eye. Um, but the first couple months we're learning the civilian side, and then the next few months is, hey, forget everything you learned. Here is what it's going to be like on the battlefield. And so then you learn how to be a medic, and it was intimidating to me because I was like, oh crap, like things could get really real, but it was okay. Like I said, that was when I started getting into, the kind of partying
So
and distracting.
as a medic, do they train you like the basics of saving a life? I mean, you're obviously not getting trained to be a doctor. So are you there to basically treat the wound, treat the patient, and just make sure, like, put a tourniquet on, make sure that they got blood, that all the things before you send them off?
So the official training that we do makes us equal to be an EMT basic, which is like an ambulance driver in the civilian world.
Got you.
But
Okay.
on the military side, we were doing so much more,
You're right.
so much more. Like,
Yeah.
when I was in, at some of my duty stations and whatnot, like in the civilian side, you wouldn't be doing IVs, but like we were doing IVs. We were cauterizing wounds. We were doing bracing. We were doing all the life saving stuff. We were doing casting. We were doing drawing blood. Or there was a lot of different things that we did. We learned a lot of the life saving stuff. How do you do a trike or trike?
Trick
I
you.
can't. Crike on a
Don't
trach.
ask
There we go.
me.
A crike. Anyway, so we're learning how to do that. We learned how to. There was just all sorts of stuff that we learned how to do. But yeah, it's not quite a doctor, but it's like, hey, we're going to save your life and then get you to the next place. But like the civilian equivalent, I don't know what it would be, but the official civilian equivalent is an EMT basic. But
Got
we
you.
were doing so much more.
Right.
You know. But one of the biggest, funnest things that I loved doing was the IVs. We would give each other IVs. We would give ourselves IVs. That was kind of the big one. Like stop the blood, give the fluids, get them to where they need to go. You know, that was kind of the biggest thing. But yeah, we learned all sorts of crazy stuff, and as we're going along the story, I'll probably think about more. But it was a lot of fun to just kind of learn how the body works, and I don't remember 99% of it anymore, because I've got my memory problems and whatnot. But I feel comfortable enough that if I saw someone on the side of the road, I could at least keep them alive. I've done that a couple times over the years. You know, but it was a lot of fun just learning how the body works, and like I said, also kind of intimidating because it's like, wait, I'm gonna be exposed to this kind of stuff. I didn't know what to expect,
Right.
but it was a lot of fun. And so that was, I turned 19 when I was in there, so I was still really young.
What
Um,
year is this right now?
this is 2006.
Okay, 2006. Okay.
Yep. So I graduated in July. I graduated in June, joined in July. In or September, or so July to September, I was in basic training, and then September to March of 2007, I was in my AIT.
Okay,
And
perfect.
so, yeah, and so then I got stationed in Germany, and it was my first choice. So when you're in the military, you get to give them like your top three places, and most of the time you don't get anywhere near the top places that you
Right.
want.
Yeah.
But I got super blessed, and I ended up in Germany, which was my top choice. I was like, I need to get as far away from my life as I can, because I still didn't know at that point that where you go, there you'll be. But I was just like, I just want to get away from where I'm at. So I ended up in Germany, but and I worked at a health clinic, which it was basically like a civilian job in a military uniform. That was where I did a lot of the more sick hall type stuff, or I did like the vitals. I worked with doctors, and I mostly worked with he was a, oh, what's it called, PA, physician's assistant. I worked with this physician's assistant mostly, and
You were like the assistant to the assistant.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I would be the one that, the patients would come in. I would get their vitals. I would do all the
The
questionnaires.
prep stuff.
Yeah, and I would help out with the doctor. We even worked with children and the spouses and local nationals. Like we were the main area where everybody in the area would come in. We did minor surgeries. We would do vasectomies, and we would do
Oh,
circumcisions, and we would do the well women and the well baby exams, and we did casting. We did all sorts of stuff, and I was involved with most of it.
hmm.
I didn't do everything, but obviously, but I was involved with helping out with a lot of that stuff. Um, and they also, that area was where a lot of people would come to train. And so they would come in and see us for their medical check in and check out before they left. Like everyone, when you came in to do the training, they had to make sure that they were okay. And occasionally I would also be the medic on the range while they did their shooting and qualifications and stuff. And so I would just sit there and kind of
Make sure
bullshit
no
with
numbnuts
the soldiers.
stat someone in the foot, or
Yes.
shot
Yes.
someone else.
Yeah. Well, so
um,
that was one of the things that I loved about basic training and AIT was going into the field and doing the shooting, learning how to shoot the guns.
yeah.
Man, you feel so powerful when you're going through that. Like, not powerful, but like you could protect yourself. You know what I mean? And I think I loved that because that kind of helped me gain a sense of control of my life, because for so many years I didn't have control of my life. And joining the military, learning how to defend myself, the combatives, the weapons, just a general sense of, hey, I am strong.
Right.
That really, really helped. And so, anyways, I always loved going and being the medic on the range. Even if I wasn't shooting myself, I would just go and just feel like, hey, I've got control of my life. It was very, very much a cathartic thing. I remember there was one time that there was a local national. There was some incident. I don't remember what happened, but he came. somebody called us in, and we're not a hospital, but we were the closest medical place, and somebody clipped his femoral artery doing some job on base. And I remember I had to run outside to meet them out in the vehicle. We threw him up on a gurney, and I had to jump on top of him and put pressure down on his femoral artery because he was bleeding out. And I remember they were wheeling me in on this gurney while I had pressure on this guy, so. And we were able to save him and to get him stabilized and then get him to the hospital, which was right outside of the base. But yeah, so we weren't a hospital, but we were able to do some of those emergency things.
Triage type things.
But like I said, as intertwined in my entire adult life, especially, like my focus a lot was on that partying. I was not able to really process through life. And so I started getting into a lot of trouble with my drinking. I decided to marry the first soldier that said he loved me while I was over there. And like I said, I found out he had his own life, and I ended up getting a divorce from him. And this was now we're in 2008 at this point. I initiate the divorce, and my alcoholism, like at first, everything I was there. I was having a good time, and I was focused.
Did you guys have a drinking relationship together too? Is that kind of, yeah.
Oh yeah. Right. That was it. I met him at the bar, and some guy was trying to hit on me, and I was like, "Hey, pretend like you're my boyfriend." And that was the start.
Yeah.
But then it was all about the drinking. It was all about the partying, But we would do our work, and then we're away from our family and our friends. And so what do you do? We just drank most of the time, like in Germany at 19 or 16, you're legally allowed to drink. And so the military's like, hey, you can drink, just don't get in trouble,
right.
because it's legal over there. But I at first would be this like happy-go-lucky, oh, I'm just enjoying myself, right? And then it was still fun when I was drinking so much that I would throw up after it hit so I could drink more. Or I was crying on the side of the road when they did last call because I didn't want to go home. Or when I was stumbling back on base and winding up in the officers' quarters, drunk, having to call my drill sergeant because I'm laying in an officer's grass and I don't want to get in trouble because I got lost when I was walking home. This was back when it was fun, right? And then, it got to a point where I was waking up in the morning, and I wasn't waking up in the morning, or I'd wake up drunk and I would miss my formations. And I got into a lot of trouble, and they ended up, there was a lot of things in and out of that, but I ended up in the Army substance abuse program. And it was a class that I did for a week.
Did they give you like a page 11 or anything like that? Did you get any kind of disciplinary things? It was just that was your disciplinary.
Yeah, they
didn't.
You. Yeah, they did me a solid. They didn't want me to get in trouble. They're like, hey, we understand you've got this emotional stuff going on. A lot of them knew my story.
Do you know what rank were you at this point in time? Like E3 or something?
I was an E2, and yeah. I don't remember if I turned E3 there. No, yeah. So I was an E2 turned E3 while I was there. And so they didn't want me to get in trouble. They knew that I come from a really rough, background. They knew that I was going through a divorce. And so they put me in this program. They're like, yo, you need to straighten up your stuff. But all that did was got me better at hiding it. I would.
Now you knew you had to hide it because you knew people were onto you.
Yes. And so I wouldn't drink as much during the week, and I would party more on the weekend, so I just got a little bit better at hiding it. But even though a lot of my memories were tainted with the alcohol and were tainted with the emotional, I so much enjoyed being in Germany because there's so many opportunities for travel. Like I was able to go through a couple different countries. I went to Prague, I went to Austria, and I went all around Germany and did so much traveling and just really, really enjoyed it and had fun. But yeah, there was so much that was clouded. Like I think I touched base on this in our first interview, but I have a friend of mine that was my pharmacy in COIC, and we had gone to Prague, and she had to like actually tell me, she's like, listen, if you're gonna drink, I'm gonna leave you here, because I was that bad. And she was like, this is
You
is
became a
not a
different
trip where you
person when
drink.
you got drunk.
Yes. I was very much in victim mentality. I cried a lot. I was very promiscuous. I was very like my needs are the only thing that matters. Like screw my friends. I pushed my friends underneath the
You went
table like
self-centered
so
right
many
there.
times. So much.
Yeah.
So much. And it was just I had no value. And so the alcohol gave me the courage to find my value in other people. That was a big one. I'm about to lose my headphones, so I'm about to just going to take them off. So just
Yeah.
a second.
Okay. No worries.
Let me put on my other ones real quick.
And now that she's situated, we are back.
Yeah, sorry about that. Brought some extra ones just in case. But yeah, so my life was just a lot about the partying and covering up my worth with other people or with that alcohol. I would do my job, but like I said, it was just a civilian job in a military uniform. I'd do my job, and then I would go home and I would drink. That weekend I would drink. I would travel and I would drink. I was promiscuous and I would drink. Like there was just, I had no self-worth, and I was learning how to be an adult, but also keeping myself down into teenage mentality with the alcohol, because I never actually processed through things. Even though I was in therapy, I would talk about this so that they didn't ask me about this. There was just a lot on. And anyway, so that was kind of the basis of Germany. It was just kind of it was just more, it was more civilian than military, when I was there. And so then I ended up getting requisitioned to Germany. And at first I went to Germany for a guy, I mean, I got requisitioned to Washington State, sorry. And there was a guy that I was kind of sort of seeing that had been over there, and I was like, oh, why not? But I also kind of felt like, hey, I need to go anyway. And so I ended up going to Washington State. And as soon as I got to Washington State, I found out, hey, guess what? You're getting deployed. So that turned the tides of, I'm no longer just in a civilian type job. Now I'm good. Like the mentality switches, and this was a whole different job, a whole different ball game, you know. And so in Washington, I did some training in Yakima, and I did some training in California. I don't remember the NTC, the National Training Center, I believe they call it that. I don't remember where it's at, but we did some training out there in the field and really learned how to be a field medic. Here is, because okay, when we were in basic training, we went to the field, but it was in the forest, right? And it was like the old school type of training where you're like digging a hole and muddy, and you get gassed in the middle of the woods and stuff like that. And it was very much like old school. And so then when we went to California and Yakima, it's like, hey, this is what Iraq is going to be like. And so we were out in the desert, and we were building structures, and we were, like learning how to do more of the urban, is that the word, urban fighting? Like in houses, and learning how to break down the houses
Yeah,
and
going to house and all that stuff.
yeah. So we were learning how to do that kind of stuff, and then how to treat wounds and like pull people, like because in the field it's like you've got all these trees to hide. Well, now you've got to hide behind vehicles, and you got to hide behind the buildings, and so you're learning how to drag them out and how to do that kind of stuff. And they actually also had me do. We weren't allowed to talk about it for a long time, and I don't know how much details I'm allowed to go into now, but we did live tissue training on goats, you
Mm.
know, and I would not have felt comfortable deploying to Iraq had I not been able to experience actual blood on my hands. It was like the best training that I ever did. It
Because
was,
it's most closest to live you can get, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to like treat missing limbs. We had to learn how to do intravenous IVs, where like you actually like cut the skin and pull the vein out and do an IV in there in case you can't
Oh,
get it. We learned how to
wow.
do, I think it's called intraosseous uh, IVs, something like that, where you like stick this thing into bone to be able to get
Sheesh.
an IV in there. Yeah, like we learned how to do like so many different things. You learn how to treat sucking chest wounds, and it's like as we're doing this, it's like, oh man, like this is real. Like we are learning this like combat stuff. We are going to see some hell, and it was very intimidating, but it was really good. So anyways, so we did all this training, and then we end up getting deployed. So we end up in Iraq, and I worked. There's so much I could talk about. I'm trying not to go on and on and on, but there's like so many layers to this. I was in for almost 6 years.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So you definitely there's so much to talk about because a lot
Yes.
happens in 4 years. A lot of six. That's another 2 more years of a lot more stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
I get
So I'm trying to
it.
just kind of like highlight some of the
Well,
things.
I'm thinking at this point in time, what we do is probably go with your side, and then I'll do mine next week. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
that
Yeah.
way, that
We could
because
do
we're
that.
already at 46 minutes, and that way you can kind of have your time, and then we'll just kind of close, and then I'll do part two, and I'll do my side, and then we'll just conclude it.
Perfect. That I don't feel
Yeah.
like I have to be so rushed. Okay.
Right. Yeah. I was looking at the time. I was like, maybe we'll just do it that way. So that way we
Okay.
can cut it, and that way people aren't like, this is going to be like a 3 hour long, show or something.
Yeah, because I don't want you to not have time to share your story either. So,
No,
okay.
right. No worries.
Awesome.
No. So no, we'll just do this by parts. You do
Okay.
part one, and I'll do part two.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. So, okay. I can relax just a little bit then. Okay. So I ended up getting deployed to Iraq, right? And Iraq was a whole different beast. Like it was there were so many layers of the deployment, dude. Like so many layers. When we first got there, luckily I was on a big base, like a really big base. It was called Fob Warhorse. It was in Bakuba. I don't know. I couldn't tell you northern, eastern, southern. I don't know where it's at. I just remember it's called Bakuba. BAQUABA or something. Anyways, BQ. I can't even spell it. But Bakuba. But anyways,
Yeah. Yep. I'm not
yeah,
a speller.
yeah. So we went there. So the base is all set up. It's a giant base. There's many people. We even had like the best DFAC in the area, which DFAC is dining facility,
Oh,
for people who
yeah.
don't know. And everyone calls it chow hall, different
Yeah.
names.
Yeah. We're chow hall kind over
Yeah,
here. We're the
yeah,
food. We give it food. Chow hall.
yeah. Yeah, well, we
Simple.
had like the best one in the area. I mean,
Nice.
like we had it was one of the best morale things that you could have in Iraq is food. Food,
No
food.
kidding, because that's why we would
Yes.
go to the where the air wingers were setting up in the Middle East because they had the best chow over there. You know what I mean? We're basically getting gourmet MREs. Where we are at with fly infestation, by the way.
Ugh.
But yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
we always try to go find the better chow halls, and it was always either like the air wings, where it was a little more civilized.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. So we definitely got spoiled with that. However, on the other side of things, so we'd have the good chow hall, but also like behind our aid station, we had the burn pits and stuff. So
Oh
we had,
man.
equally, some
Yeah.
good things, some not so good things, and we were also getting mortared mostly every day. We had we
Right.
had we had mortars coming in. Thank God they didn't. Most of them did not get it like really too far into base, and a lot of them missed the base, but they were getting along the fence line mostly, and so we did lose some people, during that. There was also some random 50 cal fire that ended up inside the gate, and there's all sorts of stuff that was going on. So like we were in combat, we were in a combat area, but yeah, so it was crazy because like at first, when we're just green walking in there, we hear the mortar alarms, and it's and you're like, oh crap, we gotta hide. You go jump in the bunker or whatnot, and you flashing and like freaking out. But then, like towards the middle of the deployment, it's like, there's no point.
Right.
you know,
Oh
and
man, totally, totally,
yeah,
totally,
and you just you,
100%.
you just become callous because it's like, well, if it's coming in, if this is my time to die, then it's my time to die, dude.
Oh,
Like
especially
even
when it was late at night, we just like, fuck you, man. I'm staying in my rack until they started doing
yes,
counts. Because one time we made it to the bunker and there was like 5 of us when there should have been like it should have been full, and then
yeah.
the colonel was like, "Oh hell no, we're gonna be doing counts now."
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, in the middle of the night, if there is an alarm, even if it was a false alarm, we had to get up and go muster to the bunkers.
Yes.
So yeah, that was miserable. And then when half of the time, so I
So
don't
that's
really
crazy. You were like probably 5 years after me, and it was still popping
yeah,
like that.
yeah. Oh
Same
yeah.
situation, pretty much.
Well, and then I don't remember exactly what the protocol was, but half of the time we would have to like run to the bunkers, but the other half of the time, most of the time, instead of going to the bunkers, we would have to run to the aid station because we had to be prepared for mass
Just in
cows.
case, right,
Yeah.
right.
And so and that was one of the reasons why it became like, it doesn't matter, because it's like half of the time we're running through it anyway when other people are running to the bunker. So I don't remember what the protocol was. I just remember it was sometimes we would go to the bunker and other times we'd go to the aid station. So I don't know if it was when I was on call or I can't remember at whatnot, but I worked at the aid station there. And so, yeah, we had to be prepared for mass cows. And we did a lot of like trainings for that as well. It was like we would do the war games. Like some people do the war games, where it's like, oh, I need to be prepared to kill, I need to be prepared to fight, I need to be prepared for this. Our war games was get to the aid station, be prepared for mass cows, and we'd have people come in that were covered in all the fake stuff, and they had a card like saying, hey, here is my injuries, what are you going to do? And we had to pretend like there was this giant, mass cow is mass casualty, so a big event that everyone would come in, and we'd have to know how to triage and take care. So anyways, that was our version of the war games, right? So we had the real life getting mortared and people coming to base. We'd have to or people going on missions that were getting shot or blown up or whatnot, and they would bring them to us. But then we also had these mass cow games, so you were never able to relax because you're always like, even when you're sleeping, you may get your 12 hours off to shit, shower, shave, but and sleep. However, if those alarms went off, then you have to go. If you're on call, then you have to go. Whatever it is, like there's just no relax. And then it's like, okay, is this real? Is this not real? And so you almost kind of get jaded after a little while because you're just like, you're so full of adrenaline and you're just all the time. And so it's just like, well, this is just it.
Yeah.
But those first couple really big real world events that happened affected me so hard because I had never had that kind of experience in my life. I had my own type of traumas, but I didn't really deal with death. I didn't
Where
really
like
deal with
life is, yeah,
injuries.
like this is a life and death absolute matter where,
Yes.
you never know at what point in time if it could be your last call. You know what I mean? I mean, that's the
Yes.
hard part when you're over there because. And the other thing is you never feel like you're going to be leaving the place, right? You feel
Mhm.
like you're just stuck there. Every day just kind of blends together. You don't even know what day of the week anymore. It's just crazy how life really becomes there. And like you said, you get so numb to it. And you almost like, I don't even care if I take one to the dome right now. I mean, you get kind of, I know that's probably not what you really want, right? But your mental goes there a little bit sometimes, like, shit, man, just drop a bomb on me now, like, because
Oh yeah.
you feel like you're stuck,
Yep. Yeah. Well, so my first actual like major event that happened. So for the first 4 months, I was just working on base, working at the aid station, right? I would go out occasionally on a mission or two as the medic in the truck, but for the most part, I worked at the aid station. I worked on, so next to the aid station was this little building. We called it the Bohica. And for anybody who doesn't know, Bohica stands for bend over, here it comes again. And so that's what we would call our little place. And that was for those of us that were on call for ambulance duty.
Yeah.
Okay. So we would be in there
It's
and
that
we would
military
wait.
humor.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so we would be there. We would have the motor pool with our vehicle set up, and we would be there waiting for people to come in. They would get treated inside the aid station, and then we would take them to the helipad or take them back to their units or whatever it was. Okay. And one of the big things that happened that came up was and this one is rough. I kind of talked about it before. There was some corruption that was going on. There was some higher ups that just didn't know what they were doing, and there was an incident where a striker, which is kind of like a modern day tank but on wheels. Okay, so we were in the striker brigade, but there was a striker that was going over this bridge at one point, and the higher ups told them because they got intel that there was people on the other side, right? The higher ups told them to turn around on the bridge. And these guys did. They were following their orders. They turned around on the bridge and they went over. And sorry, there were two KIAs on that. There was the gunner and the driver. They were the only ones that actually weren't wearing their harnesses. And everybody else inside was injured, but those two are the ones that were KIAs, and they brought everybody to our clinic, and that was my first deaths that I ever dealt with. I don't get
Were
as
they dead on
emotional.
arrival or
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So normally, and I still feel the emotions, but they're not as intense as they used to be.
Sure.
But usually the KIAs, the dead on arrivals, DOAs, right? Killed in action, dead on arrival. Usually they don't bring them to us. They bring them to the morgue.
Sure.
But because they were all together, there was injured and dead, they brought them all to us. And so the injured went inside and they were being taken care of. And at one point we
Were they
had
pretty critically injured or I mean just
yeah. Yeah, it was bad. It was a bad one. I can't remember how high of a bridge, but it was a really high bridge.
Shit.
And like they're lucky to be alive type thing.
Wow.
And so I remember at one point they brought the
Was it over water?
No.
Did they fall into water? It was
ravine.
just damn. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it might have been
And
better
so,
for them in the long run because they could have drowned on top of it also.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So they were able to be retrieved. I don't remember all the details. I just remember mostly that, but they brought the guys and they had them in the back room, the ones that passed away. And at one point, one of the body bags wasn't closed all the way. And so there was a mess that was underneath and I had to clean it up and I had to zip them back up. And I just remember it was just super emotional because that was my first dead body, and that affected me so bad. And I did my job. I did what I had to do. We got them to the helipad, after the other guys were treated, we got everybody in the vehicles. We got them to the helipad. They did like the little honor flight type thing where there was people, everybody that came and they lined up and did formations, and then everybody saluted as we loaded the bodies. And it was beautiful, but it was so heartbreaking because it's like, these are guys, these are my brothers, these are people who are my age, and it was such a stupid way for them to die,
Right.
but being able to like feel that sacrifice and see the love of everybody there, just being there as we're loading their bodies and sending them on their way, it was so super heavy, and I was the one that was driving them, and then I would open the door, but anyways, so that was kind of the big one that I dealt with. And there was other little incidents that happened, and there was also another incident at one point where there was some local nationals, that there was some issues that happened, and this little boy that was 12 got shot through, like, with a 50 cal through his thigh.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. And they brought
Gosh.
him to the base, and I was on duty that day as well. And I had to help separate the dad from the son. The dad was freaking out and having a hard time. And anyways, like, we drove dad and son to the helipad after he got treated, and so that one was really heavy for me too. And so those were two of my real big heavy moments. And those ones were the hardest for me to deal with. But I yeah, like, doing your job and focusing on that was rough. But so that was my first 4 months, was kind of doing that kind of ambulance duty. And there was a lot of other little situations that happened, and then the next 4 months I got sent over to the field artillery guys, and I was their medic to go on their truck with them. And so I would go out on missions with them. We were going on missions almost every day. And, I thank God that we didn't get blown up or shot, but we had some sketchy situations that happened before where, there was lots of possibilities for injury. And I remember there was one time, and I don't remember if I touched base before, but we were getting ready to go on a mission, and we got stopped at the gate. And the gate shut down, and we're like, what is going on? And all of a sudden we hear boom, 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 and we just see smoke in the distance. And there was a town right outside of base that had got blown up. And so somebody had, there was this whole huge thing, and like, I've only gotten bits and pieces of what happened, but they blew up the main four-way stop in the town. They blew up the police headquarters to kind of stop traffic and everything. And then they had the I don't know what the politically correct way to put it, the bad people. I don't want to be like real offensive with some of the stuff. But anyways, the enemy, somebody had gotten an ambulance, and they drove to the hospital pretending like they were there about the incident that happened. And the guy went running in, we got a mass cow, and he runs into the middle of the hospital and blows up the entire hospital.
Oh my gosh.
They were seeking to try to get some doctor, but luckily the doctor was on the second floor and he didn't get killed. So I don't know the whole story, but that's kind of what I pieced together. But anyways, so that was right outside of base, and so we just see smoke out there. It wasn't like right outside, it was a little bit of a distance, but I know people that were over there when that happened. We also there were times that we went on missions, and like, we were being led into a shady area, and we had to turn around and leave because we're like, something's wrong, but then other times the missions were great. Like, I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of opportunities for socializing with the local nationals, because one of our biggest jobs for being over there was teaching the local nationals how to survive on their own. We taught them how to fight. Some of them, we taught them how to have medical training. We taught them how to build greenhouses and how to adequately take care of their people. right? Because that was our job, was we were trying to help them repair themselves so that they could retain their economy, rebuild their economy, and fight the enemy themselves. And so that was kind of our goals for being out there. So we would go out on missions while the higher ups, we were kind of like a taxi service, while the higher ups went and had a lot of different meetings. But like I had opportunities where I could give children candy, or we would have dinner with some of the local nationals as we're waiting for the higher ups. We had some of the best food ever, you know, and we just had lots of different opportunities for that. However, we also had opportunities for sneaking in alcohol.
Mm.
So we would,
If there's a
kind of
will,
like,
there's a way.
yes. So we would do our jobs, and then we would come home and we would kind of party. And there was a lot of that kind of partying and corruption mindset, because you also had everyone sleeping with everybody else. And, I was part of that. I was part of that promiscuity. I was part of that drinking culture. I was part of that, well, we just want to distract. And like I talked about it in the first one, so I won't go into details, but I had an incident where, when we were still hungover from a night before, and this kid got hurt, and there was a huge investigation that happened. He got medically discharged because I didn't clean the wound and I didn't take care of him good enough. And so that kind of like broke me even more than I already was, because
They came back to you over this. You got reprimanded over it.
No, but I was getting investigated, and we came up with a whole lie, a big old huge lie. And so I didn't end up getting reprimanded, but I did get taken away from
The
that.
cover up.
Yeah, there was a huge cover up, but it was a lot of investigation. But I got taken out of that situation. Like I was working with those guys for 4 months, and it was kind of the time for the rotation anyway, for somebody else to take over. But I think that was like hey, we need to get her out of this situation,
And you do
So
you think that you didn't do it right because of your partying? You think that had something to do with it?
I was still hungover. I was
Yeah,
I was
you
I
just
was
weren't
still hungover. We had been
right.
drinking. I was giving someone an IV. I was it was we were in a vehicle on a mission. We were on a base that had a hospital. And instead of taking him to the hospital, because it actually clipped like one of his tendons, instead of taking him to
Oh
the
shit!
hospital, we just came up with this whole lie. I cleaned it out. We covered it up, and just said that it was an accident. And I knew that we should take him to the hospital, but in my mindset, I was like, well, I'm just going to follow
Scared,
along with what these guys do.
right?
Yeah. So it was I should have stood my ground and said, hey, we need to get him to the hospital. Like, this is not okay.
Well, at least you own it. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh, I own it now.
there's a lot of people that wouldn't want to own that. You know what I mean? So
Oh yeah. Well, and
that's
this part of my recovery is recognizing that hey, my drinking led to some shitty things that hurt other people.
right.
you know and that was the thing, is like, even though like drinking was such a normal thing for so many people, I took it to the extremes, and I wasn't thinking straight. I had that alcoholic
You're the
brain
one that
where,
definitely couldn't handle your liquor, right? I mean,
yes, and it was like I need to protect myself. It was, anyways, there was just so much that was going on that it was like I need to protect myself. I was so much in ego, I was so much in fear, I was so much in anxiety. And so it was like alcohol gave me courage, but it also put me in a bad situations, and I was so full of fear. I didn't want to get in trouble, and I wanted to be a people pleaser, and there were so many different layers to it. But I was like in an uncomfortable situation, and it was a higher ranking individual that injured the lower enlisted, and we didn't want to get in trouble. And so it was yeah, it was a very, very interesting situation. But around this same time, okay, so like I said, there's many different layers to this, right? Around this same time, after this incident happens, after my 4 month rotation with these guys, I'm being investigated, just also just in self-pity mode and stuff like that. And just in this mentality of, this is a whole lot of real world like going on here. after this, and like I said, we were going on missions every day, so you never knew what was safe, what was not. You kind of were just moving around. Anyways, after those, so I've been out in Iraq for 8 months now. I go home on leave. When I go home on leave, when it's so funny, if people don't realize, Iraq stinks really, really bad. You've got the burn pits, you've got the hygiene stuff, you've got you just a bunch of sweaty soldiers in the
sewage. It just
stinky, stinky. Yeah, sewage, but our bodies stink. Just everything is stinky. And you don't realize how stinky you are until you go home and take a shower.
Right.
And
you become pretty much numb to those senses, right? Like,
yes. And you're like, oh my gosh, what is this? So it was such a joy to do that. But
plus my nasal passage, I think, was just full of dirt. So I probably couldn't smell shit.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so after those 8 months, I go home on leave. I'm relaxing. My body comes down. The day after I get home, I end up in the hospital. I can't get out of bed. Okay. They find out my hips had given out. Because I had been going for so many months, and like going on missions all the time and wearing this gear and on bumpy rides, bumpy trucks, and my gear is smashing on my hips, and then the everything's bouncing, and just there's all of this pressure around my hips, right?
Everything was bearing on your hips.
Yeah, and I had some hip problems from basic training, but I didn't really think about it. I injured myself in Germany a little bit too, didn't really think about it. So yeah, after those 8 months, I go home and leave. I can't get out of bed. They find out that I've got bursitis and tendonitis in my hips that was super severe. And it was like, because I'd been going and the adrenaline kicked down, well, all of a sudden then my body's like, hey, you're not okay. So that week was all about rest and relaxation. And so then I get back to Iraq and they ground me to the fob. They're like, hey, you're not able to go on any missions anymore. And they put me in physical therapy. I was going to physical therapy 2 or 3 times a week for the last 4 months that I was there. And they're just like, hey, this is not okay. Something's not right. And so then they grounded me to, doing that ambulance stuff again. So that last 4 months was all about doing kind of very similar to what I did the first 4 months. But then towards the end of the deployment, when we were sending people home, then we started doing like more often, like we did 24-hour shifts regularly, but we would do more often 24-hour shifts. So we would do like 24 on, 12 off, 24 on, 12 off, because we were sending people away, but people still had to be working. And so at that point, you're just like overworking yourself so much, and just exhaustion is kicking in. And like I said, we also had other dramas going on with our higher ups, and there was just a lot of different things. So anyways, we get home. Okay. And when we get home, we get back from the deployment. So it was a good deployment, right? There was so many different layers to it. There was some good, there was some bad, there was great experiences, learned and grown. But then now I get sent home, and then they're like, hey, we want to do this like really big experimental surgery on you. Or we can kick you out. And I was like, you're not going to mess with the structure of my hips, so just kick me out.
Yeah.
So the next year and a half of my military service was mostly a lot of self-pity, because
did they have you on light duty for that remaining time?
They grounded me and they changed me. I was in this Charlie company, which was the brigade support battalion, right? And they switched me at that point. They switched me to the brigade surgeon cell. Gotcha. And so I'm no longer with all of the people that I deployed with and everything. I am now in brigade. And so I start working on medical readiness with the brigade. It's a desk job. They put me on what's called a dead man's profile. I don't know if you guys had those, but it's like you can't do anything. It's extremely light duty, like no running, no no impact activities. It's completely and utterly just like low impact, no impact, light duty. And so yeah, things were a lot different when I got back. And so coming back from Iraq, I had already had all of the trauma from my younger years. And then I go to Iraq, I'm dealing with death, I'm dealing with mortars, I'm dealing with all the drama and trauma that I put myself through. And then I'm like, oh,
Self-infliction.
yes. And then it's like, oh, well, now you can't even be a soldier. Here is all of this worth that you've put in on your body and who you are. And now you can't even be a soldier. So, yeah. So that last year and a half was all about drinking and partying and promiscuity. And
All the self-worth you have built up just got smashed. It
because
sounds
I
like.
I had no visibility or no understanding that my worth was inherent. I was still basing my worth on what I could do for other people or what my body could do or what other people's vision of me was or what I could do. Right.
Mhm.
I had no idea that I had worth inside. It was just all about all of these outside things. So then I start losing all of the outside things and my worth just continues to crumble, you know? And so, yeah, that last year and a half, I worked at the desk. I didn't have to do, sometimes I didn't even have to go to formations. I didn't have to do PT or anything like that. And so my job was mostly helping. A year after we got back from Iraq, we started getting everybody ready to deploy to Afghanistan.
Mhm.
And so that was another layer of self pity because it was like,
You
oh,
can't
all of
go.
these people, yeah, all of these people, these are my people, and now I'm getting ready to send them to Afghanistan.
And you're
So
gonna be
like,
the skeleton crew back at home, huh?
yes, yeah, and so there was a lot of self pity issues that I had with that. It was just like, it was yeah, anyways, it was just hard to see. I felt bad, I felt guilty, I felt horrible that I'm getting these guys ready to deploy and here I am milking the easy life and getting ready to get out, you know and it was super heavy. But yeah, I just covered it with the drinking and the partying. I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to have these different layers in the military because I learned and I grew. But yeah, there was so much that I was still holding on to of just pain and frustration. And but yeah, that's mostly what things were like. I could go on and on with little details and whatnot, but just to kind of sum things up, I had I worked at the aid station in Germany, and then I had the field medic experience when I was in Iraq, and then I had the desk job, and that was it. It was mostly doing that medical readiness stuff, and I would go to formation and then I would do a bunch of paperwork or computer stuff. And I was just kind of left on my own reconnaissance. And yeah, so that I guess is I'm not sure what else I could talk
No, that's
about, but
perfect.
yeah,
That's perfect.
that's
I guess I'll ask you a couple questions real quick,
yep.
and you know, with your drinking and stuff like that, and I think a lot of young um military members tend to really get into drinking, right? Because for one, they're away from mom and dad. A lot of them are away from home for the first time. They got their own set of rules now, you know, and they're around a whole bunch of crazy sons of guns, and everybody it's a crazy atmosphere, right? Like to get into it's our version of college, so a lot of
Mhm.
people that are used to frats and fraternities and all that stuff, this is kind of our version of it too, right? Like the barracks kind of turn into it at night on the weekends. It's just it's wild.
Yes.
Now, do you feel though with your drinking and the things that you did, do you feel that if you would have stayed away from that, your trajectory would have been a little bit different in the military? Did you
Oh,
have
100%.
Do you think that even maybe some of that played a part into your hip injury? Was your body already deteriorating, or do you think that a lot of you drinking and being really hard on your body played a part in that too?
So there's a lot of different, and thank you for asking that. There's a lot of different layers to that, like because I found out a few years ago, that I have this genetic condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I've talked about it,
Right.
before. My body makes a defective collagen. And so I didn't know about it before. So I put myself through a lot of hard work and hell being in the military itself. But the drinking, yes, did do a lot of the damage. There was a lot of deterioration that happened because of the drinking.
When you're drunk, yeah, you feel like you're Gumby and you're just out there doing wild and crazy things, falling on the ground sometimes, right?
Well, it's not just that; it's just the substance itself was
right?
messing up.
You're kind of poisoning your body. I mean, at the same
Yes.
time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there was a lot of damage to that. I can't remember what the first part of the question was that you asked.
Just if you felt if you felt like if you would not
The
have been
trajectory.
drinking, would you had a different trajectory with your military career?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm glad that you brought that up because when I was in Iraq, they wanted me to go to the I can't remember what it's called, the NCO course, or they wanted me to become a sergeant. They
Right.
wanted me to. I was a specialist at the time when I was in Iraq, and they really wanted
E3, is that an E3
E4.
or E4? Okay, so
E4.
E4
So
Mafia. Yeah.
yeah, so I was an E4, and they really wanted me to go to the NCO board. They wanted to promote me to sergeant, but where I was at, I was like, I don't want the responsibility. Like I was still in this like do like I
Am I
want to
going to
do
be able to
whatever I
party
want.
still?
Yes, exactly. So that was part of it. And then also I didn't trust the NCOs. I didn't trust because like I said, there was some, I didn't realize at that point still that the higher ups were human too. And I still saw them as they needed to be at a certain standard. And if they're not like this, they're wrong and they're pieces of shit. And I was still like viewing them as that. And so it was like, I don't want to be a part of this, because I wasn't seeing that they were human. But I was lost in this mentality that my mentality is the only one that matters, right? And so I was like, okay, A, it's going to take away my partying opportunities, and B, I don't want to be a part of these people that I feel are wrong. Instead
Yeah.
of thinking like maybe, hey, I could change something,
Little
or hey, I
snitches.
could,
I don't want to be a
yeah,
snitch.
yeah, but I was like, I wasn't thinking how I could improve things, or I could be a good leader or anything like that. I was just like, I don't want this responsibility. I was so scared of responsibility.
Mhm.
Because I was like, well, then there's expectations put on me, and I was like, I don't want to. And that was my alcoholic mentality. I don't want to have any sort of expectations. I was so full of self pity too, and I was like, I don't feel like I'm worth it. So I had this speculum, or not spec, pendulum.
Sheesh.
Pendulum. I had this,
Speculum.
yeah,
Speculation. I was like, oh, she's just putting some
yeah.
words all together.
Yeah, but I had this like pendulum as I'm not worth it, or I'm too good for this, or whatnot. So I think that, yeah, if my mentality, if I wasn't so lost in the alcoholism, I would have been an NCO. When I was over there, I probably would have done career because I loved being in the military. I loved it. you know and I would have opted for that surgery and stayed in, but my thing was like, oh, they're going to give me money, they're going to give me like a free ride, like heck yeah, let's get out. So I really do, there was a lot of different layers there. So I do think that my projection, or my projection would have been a lot different, but I'm grateful that it happened the way that it did, because it helped me learn the lessons that I needed. you
Right.
know One thing also that I wanted to touch base on, I said that off and on, even though I was not quite active spiritually, like it's super important for me to like bring up, because it's part of my story, that I would still go to church occasionally when I was in the military. That was kind of like a huge thing for me. Like, even though I wasn't active and going to church all the time, I was still going to church occasionally. And I was actually I was there when they did one of the first baptisms for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. on Iraqi soil. It was on base, so it wasn't technically Iraqi soil, but it was one of the first baptisms that was
Wow.
there in the country. And it was like super cool, and I had other opportunities, to stay connected in my church, even though I stayed away. And there were so many opportunities that I had, because I still had such a strong belief in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that I would have these so many opportunities. They call it Mormon, right? And so there's so many people that would come up to me, "Hey, I hear you're Mormon." And they would ask me all these questions, or they would try to debate with me. And I would just be like, "Well, this is my belief, this is my understanding." And so I had a lot of opportunities to stay connected to the spiritual, even though I wasn't praying all the time. And so those opportunities in the military that I had to kind of be like an unofficial missionary was so super important. And this is one of those layers that I was like, there's so many layers when I was in the military. But before I joined the military, I had a bishop in my church once tell me, he's like, "You are going on a mission, but it's going to be different than anybody else's." And so like I'm smoking, I'm drinking, I'm promiscuous, and I'm still sharing people my beliefs about the gospel. And it was very much, I was able to learn the idea of a gospel mentality instead of a church mentality,
Got
and
you.
kind of learn like what is the basis of the gospel, and it's love and connection and spirituality, not necessarily all about, the rules and the regulations. And so that kept me going throughout my entire deployment, my entire military service, because I had the spirituality. And when I joined the military as well, I had a sister-in-law who introduced me to a lady called Sherry Call. And she is a musician in the church. And her music was so super spiritual, and it become a prayer. There's a scripture that says, "The song of the righteous is a prayer unto me." And so anytime I was feeling rough, even when I wasn't going to church, or I wasn't being active, or I wasn't praying all the time, I would listen to her music, or I would sing it in my heart. And I would lay out in the motor pool on the rocks, looking at the stars, thinking of one of her songs and just thinking of God. And so that was one of the things, like intertwined in all of this trauma that I'm in is this spiritual element, which was one of the cores that helped me get back into my spirituality when I got sober.
Hmm.
So,
Nice. Well, I got one more question, and it's a two-part question, and then we'll go ahead
yeah.
and wrap it up. But would you join again? And if you did join and were to do it all over again, what one thing would you change?
Okay. Would I join again?
Knowing what you know today.
Knowing what I know today, like if I went backwards, or are you talking about if I had an opportunity to join now?
No, like redo it again. If you had the
Oh, heck yeah.
opportunity to go right back, would you join again? And if you did, what would be the one thing you would change this next that time around?
Yes, I completely and utterly would go again, because when I joined, it taught me how to grow up. It taught me to get outside of myself. Even though I was still lost in myself, it still helped me get out of myself to do duty, and to be able to react, and to do the things that I need to do, and then feel the emotions. It kind of sucks, because I kind of learned how to dissociate, but
Right.
at the same time, it helped me act and then process. And I was so grateful for that, because it helped me just learn responsibility, and it learned dedication. And I'm so grateful that I did that. So, yes, I would go back. And anything that I would do different, honestly, I know that there are things that shoulda, woulda, couldas, right? But I honestly probably wouldn't change anything, because everything that I went through made me who I am today. It helped me learn empathy. It helped me learn love. It helped me learn, how to overcome traumas and stuff like that. I guess the only thing that I would say is I wish that I prayed more. That's kind of the big thing, is I know that the experiences I went through, whether what I did or what other people did, or just what happened during the deployments or military and whatnot, they all provided lessons for me. And so I don't think that I would change anything, except I wish that I prayed more for peace during it all, you know? So that's kind of the big thing. I'm super grateful, even the mistakes that I made,
Yeah.
because it helped me grow into the person that I am.
Totally get that.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, that was a great one. And, I know at the beginning we were going to try to do us both, but I didn't feel like it would be right for us to kind of cut it short. Our military service is a very important part of our lives. And, there's a lot, like she said, there's a lot of layers in there. And there's no way, even in an hour and a half or 2 hours, we could fit every detail or anything that we've done. But I do appreciate you coming and telling your experiences, and even the hard part, even the part that you're not proud of. You still have, you still want to come out and talk about it, because you never know who could be listening and going through something very similar, and maybe you can change their trajectory before it gets too late for them. But we thank you everyone for following us along. And next week I'll go ahead and give my military experience. You'll hear um, Bryan's version. Today you heard Marie's version. And so and then after that, we'll the next week from that, we'll go on and talk about how separation was for us and all those things. And once again, once we kind of get towards the end, we're going to reflect. We'll do a big reflection about how everything basically led us to where we are today, and how it defined us, and things like that. So I hope you guys are out there have an amazing day, amazing week, and I hope you enjoyed your weekend, and I hope you enjoy your upcoming weekend. Marie, do you have anything to say before we head out?
Thank you so much for letting me share my story. It's been fun. I was really intimidated. Go ahead.
You needed to
What were you
read a
gonna say?
poem.
Oh, sorry,
No,
sorry.
we
Okay.
got to finish with a poem. That's what the hell we're missing. I was like, something's not feeling right here.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, I'm super grateful for this opportunity. I've been I was scared in years past to kind of share my story, or like always worried. And the reality of the situation is I'm learning and growing every day. I told this before, like, my story doesn't change, but I become a different storyteller, and I'm
Right.
learning and I'm growing and I'm moving. And I'm just super grateful for these opportunities to share my story. And like I said, I'm always open to people asking questions, or like sharing their experiences with me. So please feel free to reach out. I'm grateful for my experiences that kind of brought me to who I am, and the military was just such a huge part of my life. One of the big things that I love doing now is to help other veterans in recovery to find some peace, to find recovery from their trauma, from their addictions. Just kind of helping them get out of the hole that we kind of like dig ourselves into sometimes. And so, based on that, I'll read this poem that's called "My Tools." Okay, and it's all
Perfect.
about that idea of digging ourselves out of this hole, right? Of trauma and PTSD, and the actions that we take with our addictions. And sometimes it's the drugs and alcohol, but sometimes it's the sex and the food, and sometimes it's codependency. And there's just a lot of these things. And most of the things that we struggle with, right, started out as a tool, but we were using the tool the wrong way, right? And so that's kind of what this poem is about. So I'll share this one with you. So it's called "My Tools," and I wrote it at almost a year sober, as I just kind of was able to see things a little differently. I was given two simple tools when I first opened my eyes. They were both meant to help me to get beyond the lies. One was a ladder that extended way beyond my farthest sight. One was a sturdy shovel to dig through pain or fight. The goal was to move forward and share love along the way, but somehow I got lost, and in pain, I chose to stay. Instead of using my shovel to help move the pain aside or fight through the emotions until they would subside, I kept digging even deeper, and the walls began to climb. One day, when I looked up, I saw the cage inside my mind. In that moment, I remembered the infinite ladder on the edge, and I hoped the extending power could reach down below the ledge. In earnest, I yelled out, hoping someone was listening. And the one who gave the tools showed he was, or, in, sorry, who, where am I at? Sorry, I
The
got
one that
lost.
showed the tools, the one.
Okay. I kept digging even deeper and the walls began to climb. One day when I looked up, I saw the cage inside my mind. In that moment, I remembered the infinite ladder on the edge, and I hoped the extending power could reach down below the ledge. In earnest, I yelled out, hoping someone would hear, and the one who gave the tools showed he was actually very near. He threw me down the ladder, but again, I got distracted. I started digging yet again, and the ladder never retracted. Once I started noticing I was in pain and alone, I looked up another time and could feel the sun that shone. I cried out as I did before, thinking no one was listening, but the ladder lowered down to me and I could hear someone whistling. Again, I got lost in sorrow and grief and kept digging my life away until at last I finally realized that I was digging my very own grave. I yelled and I screamed and then cried out loud. I could not see beyond that stifling black cloud. I blamed the one and only who had given me that shovel, and anyone else's name I could barely mumble. Never once did I think I may be doing something wrong, until at last I cried out, can you please make me strong? This time with a thud, the ladder came crashing. I realized in that moment what I'd been lacking. For just the way I'd been working that shovel, a ladder is meant to be climbed, not there to be groveled. The one up above had been given me chances, a way to get out, but I only took glances. I took a deep breath, and with shovel in hand, I grabbed onto that ladder and lifted my foot from sand. The roots of the hole, like a strong, jagged thorn, were the scars of my heart, trying to hook me to mourn. They grabbed onto my clothes to be a distraction, but I remembered that shovel was meant for protection. So, using that shovel to make through the emotion, I continued climbing upward, causing quite a commotion. I must have looked crazy emerging from down below, swinging a shovel on a ladder. It was quite a show. But as I looked around, tears filled my eyes. I saw other holes around me, and I could hear the cries. You see, I wasn't the only one who used the shovel the wrong way. Most of us had gotten lost and couldn't see the light of day. There were other people still who were emerging from their holes, and as we interlocked our eyes, we finally remembered our lost goals. With our shovels in our hands and our ladders leading the way, we continued on our journeys and knew we'd be okay.
Great job. Great job. And that always seemed to be so perfect for what we talk about. So
Thank
you
you.
could definitely see you use your poems as a part of your recovery as well, and
Yes.
expressing the deepness of it. You're really ex- you're using words to expose your thoughts, so that's just amazing. um Thank you once
Thank
again
you.
for that. And once again, guys, I hope you guys are enjoying this series with Marie and I, and hope you guys stay with us, and share it, like it, all that good stuff. It really helps us. And if you have any questions, or there's something out there you would love to hear Marie and I cover, go ahead and email me. Every day is a Saturday, 365 at yahoo.com. You can also just shoot us any kind of questions, or if you want to get in touch with Marie or myself, right there is a great place. Also, if you have YouTube, go over and subscribe. It's completely free at EDAS-USMC Veteran. And once again, if you guys are in a crisis and you need some help, and you don't feel like calling one of your battle buddies or your friends or family, and you want to be really discreet about it, call 988. And for you veterans out there, press 1. It should put you in touch with someone who can help you, either put you in the right directions for your resources, or just listen to you, and you can blow off some steam. Maybe you really don't want to discuss it because you feel some kind of way about it and you don't want others to know. please don't just keep it in there. There's other people out there that are more than willing to listen to you at any time of the hour, and I am one of them, and I know Marie is too. So that there's two of us, and I guarantee there's a lot more of us out there that are more than willing to listen to you, because we need you. We need all of you. All right. So don't let the day kick your guys' ass. Make sure you're out there kicking it. And Marie, we'll see you guys all next week. Huh?
Bye.
See y'all.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.